All right, welcome back to the channel. Glad to have you back. Now we're going to move on to running the brake lines. The first thing you need to do is decide where you're going to put the reservoirs for your brake fluid. There's a couple different places. You can mount it on the firewall. You can mount it up here in the front of the box. Because I went with 3 separate reservoirs, I kind of wanted to have them all together. Now, if you mount them on the firewall and you get them up high enough, a lot of times it can interfere with the body and you kind of got to trim it out to be able to get the caps off. So I noticed some guys mounted them right up here. So in order to mount it, I had to make a little bracket for that to happen. So this is about 14.5 inches long by 2 inches wide. I initially made it 14 inches by 2 by 1. And then I bent the bottom here at 90 degrees and then I just trimmed it till it was about a 1/4 inch, just to give it a little more rigidity. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and assemble the reservoirs and we're going to mount them up right here. All right, step one, what we're going to do is we're going to take the reservoir and we're going to go ahead and unscrew the cap. And we're going to install the gasket that comes with the kit inside the cap here. And what you do is you just slide it in place and then you use a small screwdriver to make sure you get everything inside and that all of the edges of it are underneath the threads. And that's all there is to that. That's done. Next piece is you're going to take the 90-degree fitting that goes on the bottom of the reservoir and you're going to go ahead and screw that in place and tighten it up. Now remember, this is an NPT fitting. Do not use Teflon on your brake system. Some people will. Some states don't allow it, but in general, it's a bad practice. So just make sure everything's snug, get this done, and then we'll move over to the car and get these mounted up. All right, we've got the gasket installed all the way down inside the cap, and we've got our little 90-degree NPT fitting attached to the bottom. Next thing, we're going to take our reservoirs and we're going to hook them up on this panel right here. I'll go ahead and bolt all these in place and we'll take a look at what it looks like when it's done. Okay, and there you can see it all installed. Looks pretty damn good if I do say so myself. Now we're going to move on to running the hoses up to the master cylinders inside the pedal box. You know, I've already received a comment that I have my reservoir spread out too far, but luckily it's my car and I like the way it looks, so that's the way it's going to stay. Next step is to get the hoses, the lines to come off the reservoirs and go back to our master cylinders. I looked at a couple different ways to do it. I want to use the holes that are already drilled in there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here with all 3 lines. I put a little grommet here to protect the hoses. And I'll run my electrical through here, right across there. So I'll use that hole for that. And I'll bring the brake lines out through the firewall individually with grommets. So that's the plan. Let's see how it turns out. There's a look at the completed system. And I gotta say, I think it looks pretty damn good. Okay, so if you've got the Willwood brakes like I do, you get this little kit that goes with your brake set. And this is the portion that hooks up from the caliper up to where it actually hooks to the chassis of the car, and then you transition to hard lines. So what you get in there is you get a couple of flexible lines, you get a 45, and you get the mount that hooks to the clip that hooks the side of the car. So this hooks to the side of the car. This clip goes through like this. And then this slides down to hold it in place. And this will run from the edge of the chassis down to the caliper. I'll get it all put together and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, we're going to start this off by mounting the bracket just like it says in the book. It goes right here. Big difference is, remember, you're using 3/16 rivets on this, so use the correct size rivets. We'll get that done and move on to the next step. Same rules apply. Drill the holes, put a little silicone on it, cleco it, and rivet it in place. Okay, next piece to go in, just like I showed you up on the table. And remember, once we slide it in, we're going to slide this little clip over the top of it here, and this will kind of keep it spring-loaded and hold it in place. So we'll just go ahead and plug that in. That's all there is to it. Okay, center mass on the back of your caliper here, there's a little sticker that says fluid inlet. Go ahead and pull that off, and you'll go ahead and take the NPT side of this 45 and you'll screw it in here. Remember, you want to get it snug, and do not, especially depending what state you're in, do not use Teflon tape. Okay, next thing is real simple. These are both now set up similar to AN fittings. We're just going to put this in place here. And run it down like this. Okay, I'll get these snugged up, and then that's all that's to that. I'll get you a good picture of what this looks like as a completed installation. All right, here's your completed setup for this first part. Now, if you notice here, I did turn this clip around so that it faces towards the inside of the car, and it gave me a much firmer attachment than what I had before. So that's what I recommend. All right, a little bit of a close-up here. First piece that goes on as we start to work our way back is this T-fitting here. And this T-fitting will mount right here. And you're going to tighten it up and adjust it so that you have one opening heading towards the front of the car, one opening heading towards the center of the car. This one's going to come back around, follow along this tubing here, up into the box, into the pedal box. And then this one is going to lead down across the frame and pick up the right brake caliper. Okay, so what I actually did was got all of the front brakes, the brake lines all run and installed. The reason I didn't show you or talk much about how I did it is because, to be honest with you, I kind of flailed through the whole thing, and I don't want to teach anybody any bad habits, especially when it comes to brakes. So what I'm going to do is just show you how it looked in the end, which is right along with how it goes in the book. And we'll just pretend I did everything right the first time and didn't have to buy 30 or 40 feet of extra brake line or anything like that. So let's just check it out. Okay, let's start from the master cylinder. Coming on down. It goes through the firewall there. We pick up the rail, and it comes to the junction, the T. You can see half of it goes out to the wheel and the other half continues on. Continuing on from the T, comes down, runs along the main tube, then it comes back up, and then over to the junction. Now, you can see I ran out about 6 inches short. And I don't know if I went a little too far on some of my bends or what, but I was going to cut that off and move it so it was in a place a little less visible. But then I got to thinking, anytime your brakes leak, 90% of the time they link at a junction. That junction could not be any easier to get at right where it is. So I'm going to leave that and press on. Okay, for the back, what we're going to do is we're going to bring it off the master cylinder. We're going to bring it out this same hole right here. And then we're going to run it down underneath the car where we're going to pick up the 3-inch and follow it all the way to the back of the car. Now, when we get to the back of the car, here's where I'm going to do it a little bit differently. They have the brake lines running up in this area and here, through here and all that. And there's just a whole lot of stuff going on with the emergency brake cables and everything else, which of course I put there. But I have a much cleaner way, looking at how everything is set up here, that I'm going to go ahead and set up my brakes. I'll show it to you when it's done. Okay, so you can see here I have the tab mounted. The original hole right here doesn't line up with anything, so I had to drill a secondary hole here. Oh, hey dog, how you doing? Drilling the holes here is real tough, but if you have one of these handy dandy little things, it works quite well. Now, of course, in this case, I was just cleaning out a hole that I already drilled, but this really was the only way. This was the only way I had to get at it. Okay, you notice to get this to get a good firm connection, I had to bring the rivets from the back to the front, and I used the hand rivet squeezer instead of my handy dandy automatic one, just because that's all I had room to get in there. So the next thing is just like the front, we slide this connector through here, and then slide the clip on to hold it. There you go, just a little love tap to get it on there. And away you go. Now I can't spin it all the way up because the rivet's in the way, but as long as it's not hanging upside down, I'm happy. All right, here's a good look at the finished product on this. You notice how you put this little S in the cable itself, and very important, where this comes out right here, that I have it angled a little bit downward, and that kind of gives me the clearance and the swoop to stay out away from the spring, and I won't affect any tire or anything that's mounted on this particular hub assembly here. So I think that's a pretty clean installation. Okay, here's a quick look of starting the rear brake lines. Started up here. This is going to be my rear brake master cylinder. Did a little twisty curl there, and I matched it up with the lines that were the brake lines that were already there. File that out. And it comes down in the front here. Now, I've seen guys run them on the inside before, and I was going to do that, but then I got to thinking, I've never built anything that I didn't have to work on before, so I might as well do it where everything is where I can get to it. Okay, and here's a look at the finished product. It comes off the brake, up to the split, and then what I did was I just ran it straight up to this cross member right here. And you can't see it because it's behind the cross member, but it just runs straight across here. And then you see it comes back down and it hooks into the junction there that takes it down to the soft tube that runs it to the caliper. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to bleed the brakes. Now, coming from an aviation background, the way we bleed the brakes is not from the master cylinders down to the calipers. We bleed them from the calipers up to the master cylinder. So that's what we're going to do here. It's really good when you're starting a system that has nothing in it at all, because it allows the air to go up, which is where air usually goes. So start off by going down to TSC or Home Depot and picking up one of these little sprayers. They cost about 10 or 12 bucks, but you want to get the one that has a nozzle like this and the ability to push it down and lock it in place like that, okay? So it's just a simple little sprayer. And what we're going to do is first we're going to pull out this brass piece at the end of it, which takes just a little bit of oomph. Pop that out. Now we're going to take a piece of 3/16 hose and we're just going to jam it on. I'll edit this, of course. It goes on really hard, but that's a good thing. All right. Once I get that 3/16 hose on there, we're going to put a hose clamp on it to hold it in place. Now, the thing that I'll remind you about this is this system works great, but everything we're putting together here is basically a one-time use. If you let the brake fluid sit in here for 2 or 3 days, the little seals inside this pump will deteriorate and it won't work. So make sure you got all your ducks in your own and ready to go before you do it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this 1/8 to 3/16, and yeah, it's threaded, but we're going to hit it with a hose clamp to hold it in place. It's easier to put this, and then on the end of it goes a piece of 1/8 hose. This is actually airline for my dad's oxygen. I don't think he'll miss it. Then we're just going to simply take this, and we're going to take this, stick it in the end of the hose. Tighten it up with a hose clamp, and now you have a handy dandy reverse brake bleeder. So, the way this works is you put the brake fluid into the canister, you pump it up, and you go to the lower bleed valve that is on the caliper. That is the furthest away from your master cylinder. So in this case, it'll be the right rear. And what we'll do is we'll open that bottom bleeder. We'll put this hose over the end of it. Now, usually just the width of the hose is enough to hold it in place. However, if you have to, you can take a zip tie and just zip tie it on there, and it'll give it just enough strength to hold it in place. So we're going to go ahead and pump this up, then you turn it on and you just let it flow. And you'll watch it come through the line. And as it starts to flow, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the opposite side and I'm going to open the top bleeder on the caliper. And as soon as I get some fluid out of there, I'm going to close it. And now we're going to come up to the master cylinder and the reservoir. Now, as it flows, it'll flow through the lines and bring all the air up into the master cylinder, and then it'll start pushing it out of the master cylinder into the reservoir. As this is happening, there's two things you have to do. One is every now and then gently pump the brake pedal to get the air out of the master cylinder. If you don't do that, you'll never get the air out of your brakes. The next thing you need to do is get your trusty turkey baster, which you'll see later, and as that reservoir starts to fill up, you can suck the fluid out and put it in an empty Coke bottle so that you don't make a big mess all over the floor, because you want to let it run for a while so you're sure you get all of the air bubbles out of the system. After we've done that and we feel like we got a decent pedal, just to be sure, now we're going to go over to the left side, hook it up to the bottom bleeder on the caliper, and we're going to do the same thing and let it flow all the way up through and make sure we get all the air out. Already loosened this bottom bleeder. Now we're going to slip this hose over it. The problem with these Willwoods, which may make this to where I have to hold it in place, is the bleeders themselves are so short that it's hard to get anything on there to hold them in place. So hopefully this will hold. If not, we'll have to do it by hand the whole way, which is not the end of the world, because I have two people helping me. So I'm going to pump this up. You have the 1/4-inch wrench over there. We've got the top bleeder on the other side open. And now we're going to try to make the magic happen. And my whole system's leaking a little bit, but that's all right. Can you hear it bubbling over there or anything? I can see it moving. It's definitely moving fluid.
Whoop.
Got it?
Yeah.
Good. Check the other ones.
I know.
Find out why it was leaking so bad. You can only just crack these bleeders. If you open them more like a full turn, then it pisses out all along the side of the bleeder.
All right. Getting it out of all 4 screws of the bleeder. Over here. Which one of these is the rear?
Hang on, I'll tell you.
Oh, I can tell. I got fluid.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Well, that's good
Very
news.
little. But
Well, that's something.
some bubbles.
All right, good. Now, while that's happening,
Yeah.
pump the brake.
Hang on. I'm gonna set this cap over here. You may keep bumping it.
Yeah, just pump it a few times and then look in the reservoir. Now, you see the turkey baster over there?
Yeah.
When that starts filling up, suck it out with the turkey baster and slide it back into that Coke bottle, that Pepsi bottle over there.
Hold for it good, but there's a bunch of air popping through there.
There is air popping?
Oh, yeah. Well, now it's not.
What's dripping over here?
Huh?
Something's dripping. This? Is that one dripping? Yep, that's leaking. So we got it all hooked up again on the front. It actually seems to be working a lot better on the front. I don't know why, but I'm not complaining. It does leak a lot, though. It really does. And that's just a function of the tips of these bleeders are so small. All right, stop. We got a leak.
Huh?
We got a leak.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, we've identified a leak, so we're going to stop what we're doing, secure everything, and find out what's going on here. All right, that's enough of that. I think you get the idea. Some lessons learned from this. So this is air tube from my dad, like I told you, but this is a couple years old, and it had gotten really hard and stiff. And what that did is it caused it to not really attach well to the nipple or to the bleeder. So I went back and I cut a chunk of his new air hose off. And once we got Dad back from the emergency room, we tested it out, and it worked much better. It didn't leak here, and it was much easier to keep it leaking at the bleeder. Now, if you have the wheel wood, like I said, I pretty much had to hold it in place the whole time so that it wouldn't leak all over the place. And I also found that you only want to open that bleeder about a quarter turn. If you do it more than about 3/4 of a turn, when you pressurize this, it'll leak out around the sides of the bleeder. So about a quarter turn open, use a nice soft line, and then you'll get your flow going. What I really liked about this was it showed us our leaks in real time. So the system stayed under pressure as you were filling it up. So it didn't just get a little bead on it. It would actually continue to leak to make it easy to find. I had a total of 3 fittings that were leaking. One was just loose, and the other 2 just needed to be reseated. And once they were reseated, it took care of the leaks. The last thing we did was we went around and we bled the calipers conventionally. It only took about 2 tries, maybe 3 on one of them, just to make sure we got the air out of everything. And we ended up with a really hard pedal, so I'm very satisfied. Well, that's all for this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. Be sure to like and subscribe. On the next one, we'll be looking at laying the electrical wiring harness in, and hopefully we'll have an engine. We'll see. Okay. Hey, Chief, what you doing? That's a screwdriver. Don't, Chief, don't, give me my screwdriver.